What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare, and we are almost through. We've only got a couple more shotguns to cover. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the Origin 12. And first up, as always, let's have a look at the damage. And just like with all of the other shotguns, we're going to go over this again. In this game, we get a base amount of damage dealt per pellet that hits the target. However, there is also a damage boost for every 2 pellets that hits. So it is a little bit strange when it comes to shotgun damage, but another thing to point out is we do get an extremely small boost to pellets that hit the head. However, this boost is negligible. It's usually only boosting it by like 1 or 2 damage points, and therefore generally aiming for the head is just not worth it at all with shotguns. When it comes to the Origin 12 specifically, the maximum amount of damage you can do if you are literally touching the enemy player and you hit every single pellet to the body, this is 204. Then at the absolute longest ranges that you're able to hit your target, assuming only one of your pellets hits, it's going to deal 18 damage. As for our rate of fire with the Origin 12, which is semi-auto by the way, this is 269 rounds per minute, which is actually the fastest in the shotgun category, with the one exception being the R90, but that one fires more of like a 2-round burst, and there is a delay between those shots. So if we're looking at just sustained fire over time, the Origin 12 actually shoots the fastest. And what this means for our time to kill is obviously if we get a one-shot kill, our time to kill is 0 milliseconds. However, if it does require that second shot, it's going to take you 223 milliseconds to kill, which is a fairly competitive time to kill up close, but it is going to be beat out by every single SMG in the game. To top that off, our range values aren't very good at all with the Origin 12. You have to be very, very close to your target. Our maximum one-hit kill potential is just 4.1 meters, and then beyond that, out to 22 meters, it's going to take you 2 or more shots to kill. And then after 22 meters, you literally can't deal damage with this gun. As for the muzzle attachments that impact our range, the lightweight suppressor reduces all of our ranges by 25%, which is a pretty huge reduction, and I wouldn't recommend using this. Then with both the monolithic suppressor as well as the choke, we hardly get any increase whatsoever to our one-shot kill potential, although technically there is an extremely slight increase here. However, there is no impact whatsoever to our maximum hit potential range with both of these muzzle attachments. I did also want to briefly touch on the slugs. I wouldn't recommend using slugs with the Origin 12, even though it does pretty much double your one-hit kill potential. It's extremely inaccurate and extremely inefficient as well, and you're typically just much better off spamming out as many pellets as possible rather than using those slugs. As for hipfire, which is a very important stat for shotguns, the Origin 12 has the widest hipfire spread in the entire shotgun category by a pretty noticeable margin. Now, just like with all of the shotguns though, if we aim down sight, for some magical reason, our pellet spread tightens up quite a bit, and you can see that the Origin 12 is no exception. You can see there's 2 different pellet spreads on the right-hand side. That's from 2 separate shots, and it's significantly better than hip firing, even though it's not super tight by any means either. Now, getting into some handling stats, our aim down sight time is on the faster side for shotguns, but it's still pretty slow at 334 milliseconds. Whereas our sprint out times are pretty standard for shotguns at 284 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time, and then when it comes to our super sprint out time, or tactical sprint out time, this is 450 milliseconds, which is pretty slow. Getting into magazine capacity, this is 8 rounds with 16 in reserve, and when it comes to our reload add time, our standard reload add time is 1.34 seconds, which is quite fast. That's actually very solid. However, if we did want to speed that up even more, we could use the sleight of hand weapon perk, which will cut that down to 1 second exactly. But that brings us into our movement speed, which is very solid at 97%, and our aim down sight stray speed with this gun is also very fast at 67%. And that pretty much covers it for the basic stats of this gun with no attachments on it whatsoever, and it's pretty clear that this is designed to be that more hip-fire, spammy sort of shotgun. It's not about lining up that really nice shot and hitting as many pellets per shot as possible. It's about getting your shot off quickly and on target as fast as you can, and you really have to get super close to your target as well. But with that, it's time to move into some of the unique attachments for this shotgun, and we've got quite a few, so let's start it off with the barrel attachments. And the first one is the Forged Tack Precision Barrel, and with this, it increases your damage ranges by 7.5%, which is a nice little boost. It doesn't do too much to our one-shot range, but it's a nice boost nonetheless. And on top of that, it states that it gives you a tighter pellet spread, and you can see here that the results are fairly inconsistent. That's just kind of how this shotgun is. It doesn't have a super tight pellet spread either way. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this hurts your pellet spread, but it also doesn't help by a super noticeable amount anyway. As for the one downside to this is a reduction to our aim down sight speed. Our new aim down sight time is 367 milliseconds, which is a 2-frame increase at 60 FPS. Now, as for our second barrel, this is the Forged Tack Wide Shot barrel, and with this one, it's kind of the opposite. With this, we get improved aim down sight speed, and this actually improves it by 2 frames at 60 FPS, so our new aim down sight time is 300 milliseconds. And the next thing that's stated as a pro is we get a wider pellet spread while aiming down sight, and this is generally not really a pro, but I wanted to show it anyway. And again, we see some pretty inconsistent results here. That's just kind of the nature of this shotgun, so you can't really draw too much of a conclusion from this. It doesn't have that much of an impact, though. However, the stated downside for this is kind of a big deal. It reduces all of our ranges by 10%, which is something you generally want to avoid. But finally, this leaves us with one last barrel, and this is the Forged Tack Impaler, and with this one, our damage ranges are increased by 12.5%, which is definitely a really nice boost. Then on top of that, we get tighter pellet spread, and in this case, it seems like our pellet spread starts to get a little bit more consistent at least, which is nice, but again, not really super noticeable. And the downside for this one is, first up, our aim down sight time is slowed down by 3 frames at 60 FPS, so our new aim down sight time is 384 milliseconds, which is quite slow. And on top of that, our overall movement speed is reduced by 4%. So those are the barrels, but we do have some other important attachments to look at, and the next one is the choke attachment, which, like I said earlier, this one has a very slight increase to your one-shot kill range without increasing your total damage range potential. However, the main benefit to this is we actually get a significantly tighter pellet spread while aiming down sight and using the choke. So this one actually helps a lot. The downside to this is a slight decrease to our aim down sight speed. Our new aim down sight time is just 350 milliseconds, or 1 frame slower, which really isn't that bad for the great benefits you get while aiming down sight. So even though the shotgun is really designed around hipfire, I still like using the choke on a lot of my builds, because what I'll do is I'll start by hipfiring as soon as I possibly can, but while I'm doing that, I will also try to aim down sight so I can get that tighter pellet spread as time goes on. Or if I am just sneaking up on a target and they're at a little bit of a range, then I can just aim down sight and make sure I'm hitting the most amount of pellets possible. But with that, I want to move into the laser attachments, and the first one is the 1 milliwatt laser, which helps our sprint out time. Our new sprint out time is 4 frames faster at 60 FPS, so it's 250 milliseconds, and our tactical sprint out time is 6 frames faster, so it's now 350 milliseconds. So that gives you a great boost. However, you can take that one step further with the 5 milliwatt laser, which not only really noticeably improves our hipfire diameter at 12.5%, it also significantly helps with our sprint out time. It actually has twice the effect that the 1 milliwatt laser has when it comes to sprint out time, and this is an incredibly valuable attachment, especially for this shotgun. However, you do have to be aware of the fact that your green laser is going to be visible to enemy players anytime you either aren't sprinting or you aren't aiming down sight. Despite that downside, I definitely recommend using this laser, or at the very least, the 1 milliwatt laser with this. But this just leaves us with the different magazine attachments. The first one is the 12 round extended mag, and with this one you get 12 rounds instead of 6, which is really nice. And the downside to this is, first up, a reduction to our movement speed, and this is a 2% reduction to our movement speed, which isn't all that bad. It's definitely something you can live with. And on top of that, it states that we get a reduction to our aim down sight speed. However, based on my testing at 60 FPS, there is no measurable change here. So definitely not a bad choice for an attachment, and when it comes to Warzone, I highly recommend using this, because if you are dealing with multiple enemies with armor, 6 shells is often not enough. Now, if you did want to take this to the next level, you can really ramp it up and get the 25 round drum magazine. But with this one, our movement speed is reduced by 10%, so now we're moving at the same speed as LMGs. And on top of that, our aim down sight speed is significantly reduced. It's now 400 milliseconds. So with this attachment, I treat it more as kind of a gimmicky attachment. I don't necessarily recommend this. 12 round magazines are more than enough for this shotgun. And overall, I would say just stay away from the 25 round drum unless you're just trying to be different. But with that, that wraps it up for all of the stats that I wanted to share for the Origin 12 shotgun. Now I want to move into my recommended attachment combination for this. And I've only got one for you guys today because I don't really like running it any other way. This is one of those shotguns where I feel like a lot of the attachments just hurt the gun, or at the very least they don't help at all. And therefore, I always find myself going to this particular setup. So with this, we have the choke for the slight increase to our one-shot kill potential, but more so for those situations where we want to aim down sight, we can get a noticeably tighter pellet spread, which just improves the versatility a bit with this shotgun. Next, we've got that Forged Tack Impaler, just because this gives us the best boost to our one-shot kill potential and our overall range potential. Then, of course, we've got that 5 milliwatt laser. Absolutely love that with this shotgun. This thing is designed to be hip-fired most of the time, and also just significantly improving your sprint-out time is huge. Then after that, we've got the no stock attachment. And this one is partially just to get our movement speed back to a respectable place, because we are using a few attachments that hurt our movement speed. But also it counteracts that loss to our aim down sight speed with many of the other attachments that we're using. And this just leaves us with the last attachment, which is the 12 round mag. Now in regular multiplayer, perhaps you could swap this out for a stippled grip to help even more with your sprint out time. But for me, I just really like the 12 round mags in both multiplayer, but especially Warzone. And this is where I want to talk about this shotgun in Warzone a little bit, because I actually feel like it's quite underrated as a super close quarters gun. I rarely see people using this, and I find it to be very effective at just finishing people off if you hurt them and you want to push them and clean them up really quickly. Or even if you're just playing close quarters and you run up against an enemy that has 3 armor plates and full health. In these situations, if you can get yourself close enough, you can kill that person in 2 shots or just 223 milliseconds, which is like 3 or 4 times faster than many of the regular guns in this game. Even if it does take you that 3rd or 4th shot, you're still getting a pretty respectable time to kill, and it doesn't require a whole lot of precision or anything. You can just spam away at that player and put them down very quickly. You don't have to aim and make sure you're trying to go for headshots or anything. You just put that player in the center of your screen and spam like crazy. But with that, that pretty much wraps it up for today's gun guide on the Origin 12 shotgun. And of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about this shotgun in both regular multiplayer as well as Warzone? Do you think it's a really good shotgun, bad shotgun, somewhere in between? Just let me know those thoughts down below. And we are now almost completely caught up on the gun guides for this game. There's only one other gun that we have to cover, plus future guns that will be coming out. And this gun is going to be the VLK Rogue. So hopefully I'll have that one up within the next week or so. But if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.